get this going.
Yeah, let's hear all about how Shane Holland, you know, a wee lad living in Ireland, somehow managed to become so famous in a mere 50 something years.
You
That's
you know you
that's
just know how
remarkable.
you
The
just know
pl-
how to plum ask me.
yeah,
Well,
I got a
I
little
suppose,
Blarney here too, but go
yeah,
ahead.
a bit of Barney.
Yeah.
Well, I think you were asking about my kind of background and all that, and how did you get into all of this stuff? And I think when I started out, I was quite interested in metalwork when I was in school, and then I kind of was, I was into music and all sorts of things, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I did product design in NCAD, which is the National College of Art and Design, and that was good because it was kind of what I was interested in, and I also was down in Limerick, another university down there, which is
Mhm.
more of a technical university, and I spent a bit of time in the States actually because I wasn't sure whether I was going to do it, and I ended up in New York and San Francisco, and then I went back and finished it off. I figured America was too big for me as a very young man, and I said, okay, I want to go back and finish my studies, and then I got a job as a technician in the college, which was running metals, plastics, all of the
Mhm.
stuff for industrial designers, and that was a great platform for me to set up my studio, which was actually in 1991, 30 years ago, and we're just celebrating the 30th year of
Wow.
me since I set up my first studio, and that was a crazy time because Dublin Central, it was probably a bit like New York in the 80s, but it was a tough neighborhood, and I set up in a basement in a small, Georgian building in Dublin Central, and I was doing some design work and prototyping work for design consultancies. But there were so few of them in Dublin that I needed to work with different people, and I worked on some of the film stuff. So I got into doing model making and stuff for the Michael Collins film, and the Butcher Boy, and doing props, and
Hmm.
it could be making replica guns one day, and making automated rats for the next Neil Jordan film. So I've always had a lot of different activities going on, and I always liked having varied projects. But it wasn't enough to pay the bills, so I got more into interiors, and I started doing my first range of lighting about kind of early 90s,
Hmm.
and they were really highly sculpted bronze pieces, and pieces that were made with some of the glass from the art college, and so using some of these old guys in Dublin who had skills passed down from their grandfathers, who were casting bronze and semi-precious metals. And I was going, this is the way to go, use the best possible materials, use the best glass, and just suck it and see. So it kind of we began to always use the bespoke kind of metalwork angle, and the handmade kind of idea as the way forward. So we do a hairdressing salon for a guy, maybe David Marshall was one of the first guys that we worked with, and we used the best of everything. And then it led on to another project, or a bar, or we started working on the Hilton in Dublin in the early 90s. And then that led, there was an English company who were doing fit outs for different hotels. The Radisson Hotel in Manchester then followed, and then we were doing the Carlton Hotel in Edinburgh. So we started moving into the UK then, and getting, projects to do front of house kind of foyer kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So that was kind of how I started off.
Great. How did you meet Matt and Brian?
Well, those guys.
I know that they were sort of like your neighbors in Dublin in a way.
Well, they are. They were only down the road. Well, kind of. I've kind of moved out of the city now in the last 15 years. I kind of moved to a purpose-built studio. This place behind me, is all sort of kind of a newer studio building, but they were in central Dublin. Your man Matt had come over from England. He sounded like the bee's knees. He'd worked for Philips. He'd worked for Apple in Tokyo. When I heard about the guy, I was going, wow, this guy is something. He's worked in Japan. You couldn't ask any more of a techie kind of
Mhm.
background. And of course, he was a bit posh because he was English, and he was kind of,
That
he was
happens.
kind of saying, he was charming the socks off you, but on his technical background. And then his other guy, Joe Farinella, was kind of an Irish Italian background, and again, he was the kind of smoochy marketing guy. And, I knew Brian was over in Amsterdam or over in Holland, kind of looking after the European side of the business. But anyway, Matt is the first guy that I met. And I went in to see him in Dublin, and he had a whole kind of, grungy kind of warehousey kind of, these mixed kind of studio places where they hot desk with different people, and it was all so cool and trendy. But I got to see that he was a pretty smart individual, and had really interesting technology behind him on this Lightly Technologies stuff. And I was going, what are these things? Are they OLEDs or are they LEDs? And he goes, well, it's all based on the kind of screens that you have in your iPhone. And he was in development of all that. And I said, listen, I don't know much about the techie stuff, but these yolks look like they're throwing out amazing light. They're giving you really beautiful sort of tones, and they're really efficient. And, they're basically the building blocks of a lot of things. So they kind of said, well, you're the guy. They said to me, well, you're the guy who has some, interesting ideas about design and shapes and different things. And can you help us on this? Because I knew these guys had it in them to design whatever they wanted, but they probably didn't have the crazy ideas that I might have, to set things out and just come up with things. I've often worked with engineers, and engineers are great for the detail and stuff, but sometimes they can't back off and see it from a distance, and that's sometimes why you need a designer with a a fresh pair of eyes, and that was that's why they got me in on it. So that was the introduction to the Lightly guys.
Well, we definitely want to keep this going with you because they certainly said great things about you. And
Yeah, I
looking
paid
at
them a lot.
doesn't matter what I see that you make, I'm impressed.
Okay.
And I'm 2 years older than dirt, so I've seen a lot.
Well, that's very nice. Nice of you to say that. Like, I think I've been in the game a long time as well, and I also have been to a lot of these different shows, and it's not too often you get a piece of hardware that you think, wow, that's got potential, or things move along quite slowly. We've seen the start of LEDs, and I even remember in the 80s and 90s, where the blue LED on its own was a big deal. Having like all the ghetto blasters used to just have red LEDs and green LEDs, but when blue came in, you were going, wow, that was a big deal, and then it kept on moving on. So the technology, I remember the technology when OLEDs came in, and I went to Frankfurt and I looked at it, and this guy, Ingo Maurer, who is a great German designer who died unfortunately last year, and he was the only guy that that Osram gave OLEDs to, because there were serious money. It was like gold plated lights, and you could see that they only trusted certain people with it. And I was going, God, could I get my hands on these? So this Lightly Technology stuff was the closest I'd come in terms of people offering me, a nice building block. So it's kind of like the Lego pieces for the future. The nice thing about having a local company that I was able to deal with, like Lightly, was to be able to discuss it directly with the founders and be able to sort of see the technology and fiddle around with it. So then when we got hold of these, these 4-inch square units, I was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with them? And then just did up some sketches, and we kind of ended up thinking, well, this thing is beginning to look like the dress of a 19th century whalebone, those corset and kind of ball gowns. So we called it organza after the material that people use in ball gowns. And it was kind of like a big frilly dress, but it's upside down. So it's kind of, it's always very interesting when you're trying to name something as well, come up with a name that's actually not used by anybody else. So we came up with organza as the first product, and we just got to figure out next, Bob, where we're going to go with yourselves, and where we're going to go with maybe the North American market, and see where you want to go after that, because like I've been a lot more in the States than I have been in the Far East. I haven't been, I haven't really. I've been invited to go to Japan and Korea before. They have these EU programs that send designers out, and you hook up with
Mhm.
the local scene out in Japan or in Korea. And I couldn't justify going out there. My missus was given out to me saying, "What do you want to go to Korea for? And what do you want to go to Japan for?" And I said, "Well, they're sending us out as European designers." And I was going, "Well, you can't. I don't want to bite off too much. I'm in a small business, and I just have to focus on things." So I've often used Europe and America as the kind of two places to kind of focus on and do business on. So there's obviously, you were asking on your little questions before, Bob, about what's the difference between the US market and the, you know, Far East or Asia. And to be honest with you, I can only really speak a bit more about US in my own experience, because I have met an awful lot of people from, Singapore and from Japan, and they've come to all the shows in Europe, and I've seen them, but I haven't really engaged as much in that market to speak, to speak kind of authoritatively on it. So in America, I've met people face to face. I've gone over on these trade show things to Chicago, where our little company was kind of pitched to the US market for bathroom and kitchen designers and different people. I did that maybe 20 years ago out to the O'Hare Expo Center there in Chicago. I've done bits of work in Seattle. I was involved with a company called Jet Phone, who were who had these phones on airplanes that you used to take out of the back.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
there was a company from County Clare actually so we were building stands and things, and we're in Orlando with them as well. So Seattle and Orlando and Chicago, and then I've kind of personally just have cousins in Brooklyn. So every Irish family has somebody that they can look up in America. So that's my kind of bit of background with the US.
Well, the U.S. market, unfortunately, is dominated by the Chinese, where everything now, price wise, has to be like the Chinese have set the price point. And if you try to make something here, which we do, we make all our products here at our factory in South Carolina.
Mm.
The specifiers, the designers in New York, where we do most of our business, they like our product, but then they say you got to value engineer it. In other words, make it in China.
Yeah.
But of course, big jobs like some good hotel jobs or big jobs in New York or in California,
Yeah.
they like the fact that it's American made, and we do good quality. Our biggest problem is trying to find young people to come to work. Like in England, you got a lot of school leavers. They come out, they don't know which way they want to go. They're not going to go to university. So they learn a skill, a trade.
Yeah.
In the US, learning a trade is like bad. It's like, if you say to someone, I'm going to learn, I'm going to be an electrician, I'm going to be a plumber, you can't get a date because all the girls' mothers say he doesn't go to college. So
you get that. I think you're getting that everywhere, Bob. Like we're getting it here. We were looking for a plumber in Ireland before Christmas. And my mother had broken her hip just before Christmas. She had to go into hospital. We had to get the whole bathroom done. They were saying, "Yeah, you'll get a plumber in March." So
if
we
you're lucky,
had that.
Yeah.
And you're going like, okay, we need to do this right now. I think the apprenticeship route is really important, and I've been trying to hire apprentices, young people. Some of them are great. I've got teenagers myself. I know it's very hard to get the focus for people to knuckle down and take a job seriously. But like in the metalwork route or whatever, I have interviewed a load of people before Christmas, and with the whole COVID thing now, we've just had to stop and take stock. So unfortunately, I haven't really been able to hire anybody in the last 5 or 6 months because I've been just we don't know where we are with lockdowns and all that, and that's it's obviously affected our relationship, Bob, in terms of trying to get stuff done, and we're kind of really slimmed down on staff, but we're just waiting to get a hold of for lockdowns to kind of finish off, and to be allowed to get back on the horse and get new people in. So we're pretty slimmed down crew here, and obviously I've got the jobs that are already in. I just got to look after them, but getting young people in, obviously in America everybody wants to be seen to be going to Harvard or something.
Right. Yeah.
Not everybody can do that, and you can't, everybody can't be a chief and having no Indians. It is a thing that the kind of craft skills are underestimated, and I think Germany has the best model in terms of apprenticeships, because they bring it to another level, and people are really proud to be an apprentice in Germany. It's kind of lagging back behind it in UK and Ireland and places, but there's a bit of focus now on trying to get younger skilled workers in and train them in. But I've trained half the country at this stage, Bob.
All right. Well, that's what we're counting on, because
Yeah,
we're having people come for interviews or say they're coming for interviews and never even show up. But we need someone. I mean, Alan here. He's the youngest guy in the company.
I'm the young gun here,
Yeah, he's
but
the young gun. He's the baby here.
I think it's interesting. It's just how do kids, everything's on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and all these things, they're looking for cool, and they don't understand that metalwork can be really cool. It can be this really cool art form that's not introduced. It's how do you introduce this like cool way of creating that's not the first thing they're thinking of, because a lot of people are thinking guitar or photography, video, whatever it is. What are you seeing? How do you getting kids excited when they come and say, "Hey, look what we can do here"? What's that vision for this?
You put it on TikTok. You put it on TikTok.
You put it on TikTok, okay?
We'll have dancing
literally
light fittings, right? Yeah.
I have my kids are on TikTok. They are just, it's burning their brains, but they're saying, oh, you should do color changing lights, and then it'll put it on TikTok, and it'll all, sell like crazy.
Yeah,
and they're probably right.
Yeah.
I'm just about caught up with Instagram and other things.
Yeah.
And the social media revolution is here to stay. And all this stuff about Zoom calls and everything. We're now hardwired for the future into this stuff, where we cannot ignore how things are done and how people are working remotely, and how everybody, the kind of office of the future, what is it? And, all these questions it kicks up. But I think it takes a lot of encouragement and a lot of hand holding to bring the young people through. You need a lot of patience for it. I can't say I'm any more successful than anybody, Bob. I've got people coming in and out of here, and maybe they might say, okay, I've spent 6 months with Shane Holland. I'm going to go out and set up my own company. And they do. And then, maybe 6 months or a year later that might have worked or not. But I can just say that you only have people for a certain amount of time these days. It's just a lot more short attention spans. But it's like anything, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it in small bites. It's kind of like, how do you create?
Good idea.
Yeah.
You have to do kind of very good work. You just need to be able to concentrate, and you need a long attention span. And even to achieve anything in business, I think the kids want to be all Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs had a pretty disciplined way of life, and you need discipline, you need focus, and I can't say that I can attract, say, my kids to get into it, but they are studying kind of creative things. One of them's over in Holland studying design, and she decided to leave the country because the Dutch take the whole design thing really seriously, and typography and everything. So I don't know how to handle the kids, but it's just, you got to let them do their own thing, and then maybe they come back to the mothership. I've been kind of, by having a lockdown with all this stuff where you're not really, encouraged to have too many staff in the workshop.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of individual kind of stuff, and I'm working on some sculptures at the moment. A land art piece for what used to be a municipal dump.
Okay.
So they filled over the dump, and we're kind of coming up with these big um, curved statues. So these kind of I'm making these little models of
Cool.
what will be big kind of curved structures in zinc, and then I'm also working on some of the corten steel, the rusty steel
Hmm.
finishes that you see sculptures in. So all of these little models are the little models that I work with. So I'm not really a computer guy. I'm pretty much old school in terms of making all these little models and photographing them, and then I get younger, fancier people to make maybe videos of them and walkthroughs. So we're working with a local authority trying to make this piece of land art, and that's a competitive tender. So it's like everything, nobody comes to Bob and says, Bob, I'm going to give you 200 grand to fit out our hotel. You're probably in against 6 or 7 different operators, and it's the same here with me.
Yeah, yeah. And it's
You
always
got
what's my price at the end, right?
well, that's it. But what's your offering is the main thing. So the interesting jobs we're pitching for at the moment, like LinkedIn. We've so many US companies setting up in Dublin at the moment, and they have their headquarters, usually on the riverside on the Liffey in Dublin. So we've been asked. Another project I've been asked to work on is the LinkedIn offices in Dublin, which are a big paper sculpture with lighting, and that is sort of a 60 square meter thing hanging over the reception area. So we're working with a Dutch artist who's a paper guy, he paper kind of sculptor, and he's asked me to come in on the tender to present this, via the builders to LinkedIn. So we're working on that at the moment as well, which is quite interesting because it could have lots of these big hula hoops of light, which light the paper. And again, I was thinking maybe the Lightly technology stuff might work, or it might be regular LEDs. So I'm thinking of that, and I'm also thinking there's an exhibition which is kind of a big design exhibition to mark the 50 years of the Crafts Council in Ireland, and I have also put a proposal in to them to possibly let us maybe design a chandelier or a big piece for the exhibition. And that's something I'd like to talk to you, Bob, about, because it's kind of, if we hook up together to try and realize something that's a kind of a spectacular piece for an exhibition that could work in a hotel foyer, and show the use of these pieces, that could be the next step for us. I don't know what you think of that.
No, I saw the piece that you made with the lightly squares, and
Yeah,
I was impressed with that.
yeah.
And also, if you do need, we can help you if you want to use like OLED pieces. Like we have
Okay,
the circles, the rectangles, everything here is in stock. Uh,
okay, great.
so we could, if you needed something a little larger than the lightly squares, you
Okay,
know, we want to be king of thin. If it's a thin light, we have it.
you have it. Well,
We
you can
have it.
imagine when you're lighting sheets of paper that have kind of cutouts in it, and
Hmm.
you're trying to get a lighting element down along the edge of the paper. That's kind of what we're trying to achieve at the moment. So it's either kind of ovals of oval frames in the ceiling and then
Hmm.
lighting down through the paper so as to give them the dramatic effect. Now these guys are all sort of, they don't know exactly what they want, whether they want somebody on an iPad at the bottom kind of touching stuff and saying, oh, turn ring number 6 on and ring number 7 on. So I said, listen, this stuff is beyond my pay grade. I don't know how to do this sort of techie stuff, but you can get contractors to do that kind of intelligent wiring
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well. Maybe Alan, you know more about that than I. You probably do.
Well, I can't say that I know about it, but I understand like you're like the designer, but there's like the techie guy on the other side that can like program it to do what you
Yes.
kind of what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's where,
the
you know,
LEDs nowadays, you can do anything with them. You just make the design and let the LED people do the color
figure it
changing.
out.
The
Yeah,
red, blue, green type of thing.
You
Yeah.
can play stuff
yeah,
the music nowadays, that hits like on all the beats, and it's just like it's pretty wild what you can do with like how you can put technology into the light and where it syncs with audio or syncs with.
yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Well,
Okay.
that's good. That'll keep your creative juices flowing, sitting there. How long is this lockdown going on for? I mean, it's
Well, you see that they closed construction. They closed construction till March. So in the next maybe 2 weeks, um, manufacturing has been allowed to continue. So I'm kind of allowed to be in my workshop, but then crossing county boundaries is kind of frowned on at the moment. But the construction will be back up in about 2 weeks, and again, it's just that will sort of get things moving on the economy a bit more. But everybody's been really scared in terms of, that obviously the cases in COVID spiked there. The third wave kind of hit us pretty bad. It was much worse than any of the first waves. So, and these kind of new strains coming in from the UK and also from Brazil, people have been really paranoid. So there's going to be a lot more travel restrictions, I think, right through to the summer. So not sure about trade shows and stuff like that as well, Bob. So we'll probably be doing Zoom calls for another while.
is it safe to ride the Dart?
Um, they're on. Well, at the best of times, it's probably it
Well, when
really
I
depends.
was on it, I lived through it, so I was okay. Yeah,
Yeah, you did. Well,
yeah.
you see that they only have 25% capacity on trains, so they all these X's on the seats at
Hmm.
the moment. But I find them fairly safe because I'm just driving up and down to the workshop, and I have my kind of PA who's an assistant, Maria. She comes in every now and again. We're kind of in here in the studio just working on kind of essential stuff, drafts and proposals. So I will have to get sort of working on open up those sketches that I started doing for you when I thought we were going to meet in Germany, and then sort of work through some ideas. So tell us, Bob, your idea about the southern states and the market for just regular houses. You kind of gave me a bit of a steer on the narrow pieces, or there was something about the wiring in a regular American house that you were kind of talking about in terms of it wasn't were they more kind of built-in lighting, or things that required the thin elements.
Well, this most of the houses in the South are really old. I mean, they're well over 100 years old.
Okay.
So they're hard to air condition, as you can imagine, and everything is hard to do because it's just everything was done before electricity. But we don't do a lot really in the South. Most of our market is back up in New York, where we started.
Okay.
So even though we're here, my head is still in New York,
Okay.
and the factory is here because
Yeah.
it would be very difficult to do a factory in New York City with all
Anymore.
the unions and all the problems that New York has.
Okay.
So we're down here in the South where it's what's called a right to work state. So you
Okay.
don't have to worry about unions, but
Yeah.
you keep the locals working. But one of the problems with the people here is that I'm not getting good fit and finish on the products. And
Yeah.
that country people can make anything. I mean, they live out in the country and they'll build their own house, but it just lacks the fit and finish. That's why I'm sort of like looking to you guys because
Mm,
I'm very impressed with the products that you make,
mm,
and you seem to it's just different. There's an Asian kind of quality, then there's the European, which is like the Mercedes,
mm.
and then there's the American, which is sort of in between. It's
Yeah.
not great fit and finish. It's not the cheapest. It's kind of in between, which is,
Yeah.
I'm afraid, what's happening with this country.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's the same here in terms of everybody wants to buy the cheapest thing if they can get away with it. But if they our kind of studio is more fitting into the niche thing where if you want a bespoke piece, then you got to pay for it ultimately. So, I can't do, the kind of the budgets, yes, that we work to are really for people that either can't get stuff off the shelf and then they need to build a unique kind of piece. So accordingly, yes, the price is kind of a bit higher.
Can you just comment a little bit on the word you use, the word bespoke, and kind of explain that to the North American market, because
we don't use that.
we don't
word
use
here.
the word bespoke.
Well, you don't use the word bespoke.
No,
That-
so
But in the UK and Ireland, every third word is bespoke. So we
It is. Well, the
need
bespoke-
to know that.
yeah. Well, bespoke is it is I suppose it's custom. You use custom in custom bikes, custom carpentry. I suppose it's just another word for that. So I don't know where the word came from in the first place, but a lot of people, particularly in England, use bespoke, and we've continued. But it's either customized, and again, it's like stuff that's not off the shelf.
yeah, okay,
Description on that one.
Okay.
great.
Good.
Well,
listen,
Shane,
That's perfect. Now we got the word bespoke.
you got that logged.
We're going to try to use it in a sentence now. Okay.
that's right. With bespoke.
All right. But I noticed when I read Arc magazine,
Yeah.
everybody's fitting is bespoke.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, that means three times more expensive than the regular stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what we try to explain. We just tell them that means very expensive.
We'll just cut
Yeah.
into that part of you saying it's 3 times more expensive. That's what it means. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's it.
Remember,
Yeah.
good is never cheap, and cheap is never good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Well,
Good.
Shane,
Well,
thanks for your time today, and we appreciate
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
And you're just letting us in on your world and kind of what's going on in Ireland, and your awesome work. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you
Well, listen,
again.
thanks for taking the time. We'll be in touch shortly, and I'm going to probably get some more concepts kind of working away, and I'll talk to Bob privately, probably more in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see where we're going to go next.
All right, and I hope to be coming back to Ireland again one of these days.
Great. Okay. Get those golf clubs or whatever you bring with you.
Whatever. Okay, we'll get them
Okay.
there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brian.